It's hectic out there. It's fear, anxiety. World's coming to an end. That puts people in a psychosis. Problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, there's a reaction. And most of that solution today is standard American diet. Put things in your body that take you out of your element. Food addictions, relationship addictions, all of these things that actually do the opposite of one thing at the end of the day, which is having self-love. Getting yourself into good shape, cutting yourself off from people that might be vampiric in nature, not looking at yourself in the mirror, seeing if you're operating as a parasitic energy. All those things that you're putting off is the opposite of self-love. You're telling your soul that you're not worth it. To be sovereign in this realm, at least you're putting yourself in a good position. And then at the end of the day, this is also the cosmic giggle. So you take a little bit of that pressure off and you're like, this is crazy. And it's funny.
And that cosmic giggle has really helped me when it's just felt so intense and there's so much out of my control. Like what is kind of within my control.
Small, tiny wins every single day sets you up for success. And I know that's cliche, but I think a lot of people need to hear that. So before you go to bed, you look at the last, 12, 14, 16 hours of your waking time and evaluate everything that's happened. What is working for you? What's not working for you? How are things turning you into wanting to run away or wanting to dive in? It's intuition that we have to rebuild. When you're discerning things and making decisions based on gathering information and resources and awareness, you're putting yourself at a position to make the right choice. It's not rocket science.
You're tuning in to that deep truth. Yeah. Jafarieh. I kind of fucked it up. Like the second go was okay.
Gave it kind of like a Spanish version. I like that.
Okay. Not exactly Persian, but we'll go with it.
Yeah. It's all the same.
So this is long overdue. We had one scheduled, a couple years ago, and flight got canceled, travel plans, which happens. And here we are today. We're finally doing it.
It's a blessing to be here on the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, and Mubarak. Congratulations to this beautiful, beautiful museum that you've made your way into. It's a blessing to you and your family. It's extraordinary.
Thank you. No, I appreciated how you and Jamie really just immediately fell in love with it.
This is what we live for. That grotto.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. It's
not to put your house on the spot because everyone's going to want to come here. But this is it. You brought Costa Rica and parts of Bacalar and Tulum into Texas.
Weird, huh?
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, you don't think of Texas to have this type of ecosystem. When I first didn't know anything about Austin, I thought, okay, what's everyone going there for? This mass exodus. I'm a California kid, right? Pacific, cliffs, trees, redwoods, all that stuff. And it's like, oh, everyone's moving to Texas. I get it. Freedom, for sure. But how can you live in the dust? And then you come out here and you're like, wait, I feel like I'm in the jungle. Pretty epic.
It is. Yep. Yeah, it is. And it's not far from downtown, but far enough where you're not downtown.
Right. Yeah. I'm a suburb guy too. So
yeah. So, people listening mostly know you for Cymbiotika. They know you for your podcast, Wake the Fake Up. I don't know if they're familiar with some of your earlier work. And as I was getting ready for the podcast, I read your manifesto from 2015.
Oh, cool.
Bro.
Right on. Appreciate that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much of it for me, especially there's one particular line where you talk about the courage, for the people, the collective to wake up from the mass amnesia. And for me, that spoke to really what I try to do here on the podcast with The Great Unlearn. It's like, it's already within us. It's just layers of shit and a lot of programming, conditioning that have closed us off and disconnected us. And so I'm curious, about a lot of it, but what inspired this awareness and birthing this for you?
I think it's in my DNA, and I think everyone has it in there. And just like the name of this beautiful conversation podcast, The Unlearning, I was able at an early age to get a lot of wisdom from my father, from my family, from mentors at an early age. And plus, I said my DNA, my human design, I'm an investigator, I'm an anarchist. I'm also a martyr, and I've always been that way in all my sports teams, it's all or nothing. And I carried that on in terms of my awareness of how we're living, and what's happening in our micro and macro realities. And I saw from the jumpstart, the first book I read in this field was, Children of the Matrix and The Truth Shall Set You Free from David Icke at age 10.
Oh, whoa.
You can thank
whoa.
You can thank David Wolf for that, my cousin. And he was in his journey of becoming, the most famous raw foodist at that time. And a lot of that was geared upon, the manipulation of, all the systems that have been put into place. And then that with the pedigree of the Waldorf touching my heart at an early age. I was doing summer programs with activities inspired by Waldorf education. I started to see that, the indoctrination was heavy at an early age. And so I had to reverse engineer some of the things that I had been, told that this is the way. And that, along with the health journey and all of those things colliding, and also my background being the firstborn son from an Iranian family that left Iran because of the war and because of, the revolution that happened there. That's why I was born here. I had that firsthand grasp of there's things in this world that is going on that are not what they're reported to be. And so that inspired me to just keep searching. And I was attracted to the mystic arts. I was attracted to higher learning and purpose and having drive in this life. And I couldn't be a statistic. I couldn't just, I was the kid that couldn't sit in his chair. I was getting in trouble for that specific reason right there. And now looking back at it, I get why I couldn't sit in a chair. I wasn't supposed to be sitting in a chair at age 12 at 7:45 a.m. learning social studies or whatever that was irrelevant. I wasn't designed. I was designed to be climbing trees and playing and learning and experiencing my own perspective, direct observation. And that catapulted me to just want to be have this eternal fire or hunger for knowledge and information. And that led me to where I am today.
So it was, kind of the overnight success with we'll just call it that kind of analogy with the manifesto coming out in 2015. So there was a lot that led up to it. Was there some moment that really, kind of nudged you hard enough where you're like, I need to get this down. I need to figure out what this is and share?
Yeah. I'd been in that field, in that realm from, since I was a child into my teens. And then when I hit, age 21, 22, my dad's like, you got to let some of this stuff go. It's time to ground in, we got to work on, part of the structure of society, and my dad had a balance of both, which was interesting. He got that, we are in a system and there's certain things that you need to do and be part of the system. And I reflect that, we got to pay our taxes. I'm using that. We got to understand that there's abundance needed in this world. Just to drink clean water, you need abundance today. That just shows you our paradigm that we're currently in. And so I drifted into, I would say more of a material world and went into the field of real estate, which eventually led me down, capital markets and investments, and then large scale commercial real estate development. And I was in that from age 25 to age 33. And it was around 32, 33, I had this complete awakening. I had an experience in the medicine realm, and I snapped out of that short-term amnesia that I had to experience, and I had to see it firsthand. And from that point on, it's been a relearning and unlearning a lot of the things that I had taken up my everyday thoughts. And it's been quite the journey over the last 8-9 years now.
Yeah,
it's incredible, and everything's slowed down, right? Because you're present.
Yeah,
I don't stick too much to the calendar anymore, and all that stuff. We do have our responsibilities, and we run businesses and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, my connection is deeply to my spirit and my development of my faculties. And our whole thing is how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So really having super sensible awareness, which is a Rudolf Steiner perspective, that we have to see how we react to things. And I review and analyze what's taking me out of, my flow state, what relationships are causing me to feel a certain way, how I'm handling stress, how I'm approaching my rituals, what's keeping me on the path, and what's actually my true north. And that's been part of this whole development over the last, 8 years, 9 years. And it's been an incredible ride. It's had major ups and also major downs. I went through deep sickness with my best friend, my father, and what the medicine taught me and the teachings taught me and the philosophies taught me, it really helped me navigate that experience. Because if I hadn't had that preparation, God knows how I would have handled that entire, 3-4 years of, the decline of my father's health. And so that inspired everything that is happening today, that put the serious pain into real action and real purpose. And instead of the escapism behavior that many tend to go to, and I tended to go to, I was able to sit in that uncomfortableness and really process it. And I've been surrounded by beautiful, amazing people. And, the law of attraction is serious. It's a real thing. It's a frequency, and that's allowed me to have at least a shot at creating and helping things in this world and provide things to people. And that's really what my whole thing is. I'm a mirror for people, and I'm constantly in this state of unlearning and unwinding and unraveling. And it's through that faculty that I'm able to, pick up things that are very useful, and what works for me, I think can work for many other people. And I'm not someone that tells you this is how it's supposed to be. I actually drop clues so it can work in their own network, and they can practice something that we've all lost and some of us are gaining back, which is discernment, which is the opposite of judgment. Judgment is immediate, reaction, a compulsive reaction based on fear and not being aware. And for me, discernment allows us the opportunity to really analyze whatever said information is and let it feel into the body, the mind, the spirit, and then make a decision that's going to either affect my life or something that I need to just move forward with and cast that as irrelevant. There's so much information being thrown around right now, especially because we now live in this technocratic world with all of these, we've got these hand devices that are changing the fabric of our reality. And the unlearning is really important, especially because I see what's happening with children. We're not in the elements anymore. We're not in the earth. You don't even have to be agrarian. I mean, I love the agrarian lifestyle where we're living in our own ecosystem, but that's not practical for a big portion of the population. I get that. But we have to teach at a young age where all this comes from and who we are. And it's fascinating when I look at our cosmology and our perspective on where we are, who we are, why we are, we don't even know anything. And because that's been stripped from us and we don't have a self-identity, we live a false reality. We live a false identity of self. And at that point, when you're in false identity, you're quick to react. You're quick to be angry. Your life might be predicated on materialism because that's your identification of self. There's a lot of the Maya seeps into that. That's the illusionary state. Most people's perception of self is how they perceive others perceive them. So they're not even in their true self. And that's almost that's not even like, they say the Wetiko virus, but that's a spell that's, in my opinion, that's been casted on humanity right now. And Steiner said 100 years ago, we're going to enter a state around 2020 that we'll have 20 years at this point. We're either going to snap out of this, he called it Ahrimanic impulse, which is hyper-materialism. And with hyper-materialism, you have technology, you have science, you have government, you have social security, you have ID numbers, all of that. Or if we don't snap out, we're going to enter a completely dystopic reality, which she calls the eighth sphere. And that is a complete forgetting of who we are, forgetting what we've forgotten, and having no connection to our ancestral reality, our primordial force, and our purpose. And at that point, we're just material. And you can kind of see it happening right now. And look, this is heavy conversations. This is full on, especially people that have children. And what's happening, you could see it in our day-to-day. If you just turn on the news, which I don't advise you to do, I don't turn on the news, but it's hectic out there. It's fear, anxiety. World's coming to an end. Hollywood, apocalypse movies, a meteor's going to hit us. There's a big, all this stuff. And that puts people in a psychosis. Problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, there's a reaction, you're in psychosis, you'll take on any solution. And most of that solution today is not, prepping. It's eat more standard American diet, put things in your body that take you out of your element, food addictions, relationship addictions, all of these things that actually do the opposite of one thing at the end of the day, which is having self-love, getting yourself into good shape, cutting yourself off from people that, might be vampiric in nature, not looking at yourself in the mirror, seeing if you're operating as a vampire or parasitic energy. All those things that you're putting off is the opposite of self-love. And you're telling your soul that you're not worth it. It's very fascinating once you get into like how we're being governed, and so for me, that's really all the cool stuff, Cymbiotika stuff, all the health stuff, all this, upgrades and all of these things are great, but those mean absolutely nothing without that being rooted at your center. And I feel strongly that, no one's coming to save us. It's on us. And to be sovereign in this realm, you're putting yourself in a good position. And then at the end of the day, this is also the cosmic giggle, right? So you take a little bit of that pressure off and you're like, this is crazy. And it's funny, and I'm not laughing at the plight of humanity or the problems, of course not, but it's just to like, ha 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 ha, right? That laugh, that shakes it up a little bit, right? Because we know like, you can do all the cleansing, you can take all the nutrients, you can do all the exercise, but if you're living in a state of fear and you have cortisol pumping through your body, you're not in parasympathetic, you're not in rejuvenation phase. It's like that. What's that book? Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers?
Yeah,
fantastic.
Sapolsky.
Is that? Yeah, exactly. We're not. There's no like actual lion chasing us down, but we're sitting in our cars, we're on the phones, we're laid up at night. And we're living as if that lion is there and we're staying in that stress. The body at some point says enough. And psychologically, you're tend to go towards escapism, entertainment, right? Trapping the mind, taking you out of your present. And again, that's another thing with the whole system, the calendar, right? This Gregorian calendar, this January to December holidays, the holy days, and the weekdays and the weekends. And you're waking up every morning. All of these are, and the mortgage, these are all death related. You can hear it in the word magic. They're all part of the lexicon of death. And it's just, we're just trapped in this. And you do that for 10 years, all of a sudden, year 11, year 12, you're doing the same cycle. That's why people's lives are, going right by them because they're not present and they're stuck on that. So again, I know this is a long-winded take by me, but I'm just emphasizing that getting into your true north and turning off the noise. And that's why people go in darkness for a week, or they do a Vipassana, or they go into the jungles, whatever it is they do, has to be an important step to breaking free from, the grip that this society has put on people.
That's beautiful. There's so much coming up. For one, I just want to mention that cosmic giggle has really helped me through some of the last 3 years when it's just felt so intense. And it's like, what more can I do? And it's like, oh, we are living in amazing times and it's super fucked up, but there's something else going on. And it's like, that's when I can really touch into my immortality of the soul. And it just allows me to breathe easy. It's like, okay, there's so much out of my control. Like what is kind of within my control. But I'm curious about the children, right? And I know that you've done a deep study on Rudolf Steiner. You've had experience with Waldorf, and I think we were chatting last time about what's actually happening with, the Waldorf school and how it's been
infiltrated.
Yeah, and I've seen it here in Austin. Our kids didn't go, but I know many friends who had kids there and pulled them and started their own school because it was very on Steiner.
Yeah, that's tricky. And just like anything else, the parasitic energy can invade any host. And parasites by nature, they want to get into places that they've never been, right? That's like their holy land. And you can see that just understanding a parasite like toxoplasmosis, the cat parasite, how that invades the brain and liver and gets into rats and makes the rat chase the cat so it can go back to the host. It's very interesting. And anything can be breached at this point. That's why we got to be so strong in our laurels, and we have to be rooted based on discernment again, right? So discernment pops back up, right? Because if you're someone that's just looking for a quick fix, there's a lot of people, I get it all the time.
Oh, I bet. Holy shit. I know I get it a fair amount. You must get it just inundated with so much of that.
Yeah. And I can't even engage it. I see it come in probably 1,000 messages a day. I don't even engage it, but I see it. It's like, can you just tell me how to do X? Can you just give me the answer for Y? Can you just tell me what I can take? Can you just tell me what I can take? Can you just tell me? It's nonstop. And this is coming from a lot of people in the alternative health community too. And it's like, that's a complete paradox or an oxymoron. You are holistic. You understand that this is a holistic experiment in this life, yet you're looking for an allopathic answer. Wait a second. Well, which one is it? So that's right there. That's the lack of discernment. And that's also people being in pain too, right? They're looking for the pain doctor. And so back to Waldorf, Steiner's, he's embedded in all of us and to a certain extent, and he was just embedded himself. I mean, he was just operating with a clairvoyance and can really put together a lot of the philosophies of the ancients and the newer Western philosophies and create this alchemy with biodynamics and Waldorf education and all that. But for me, his main legacy is his cosmology and where we are today in this fight between the Luciferic and Ahrimanic impulse and how the Christ is right in the middle. And so in terms of Waldorf education, those are just people, right? It's just people that for whatever reason felt the pressure or got scared or bought into the science. And I have no judgment. What this whole thing happened over the last couple of years, it either put you on a higher track of getting into your own power, or it made you, more susceptible and have to rely more on something else. And I honestly, there was a point where I was really angry and frustrated, but because of my position, I can't publicly talk about those things. It can hurt what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I think there's enough beautiful people out there that tell it how it is and give you the real truth out there. But it was disappointing. A lot of mothers were contacting me from all over North America and even in Europe about how the Waldorf schools went this direction, which was really opposite of, Steiner's teaching and how health works. So it's just one of those things that it could be karmically related to people's paths as well. When you make a decision, there's a reaction. That's a form of karma. And so some people have to learn the hard way, and the School of Hard Knocks is available for all of us.
It's still open. So in back to
it's
something
still open.
you mentioned Steiner's kind of idea about where we're at right now. And in your manifesto, I'm quoting here, stepping forward, we will either change course and enter a new era of paradise, or it will be the end of life as we know. And I'm curious, where do you see us trending?
Well, paradise.
And you may have just talked about it in it depends on who you are.
Depends on who you are.
Yeah.
If the world's falling apart, disease is taking over. The systems are all, corrupt, and everyone's corrupt, and you can't trust everyone, and everyone's full of shit, and you're on your own, and, there's something inside of you is going to kill you. And that's your life. You're going to live that, because that's, your perspective and your perception on life is ultimately your reality. Right. At the same time, not getting yourself in position to succeed in your own development, meaning you don't have momentum going in the right direction or trending in the right direction, you're not giving yourself a shot. And I was just on Kyle Kingsbury's podcast, and we were kind of talking about momentum, and I brought that up on an earlier podcast with him, and he mentioned that and paraphrased me. And I'm a strong believer that small, tiny wins every single day sets you up for success. And I know that's cliche, but I think a lot of people need to hear that. It's just like the Rosicrucian or the Gnostics said, you evaluate and research in your entire day. So before you go to bed, you look at the last, 12, 14, 16 hours of your waking time and evaluate everything that's happened and see what is working for you, what's not working for you. How are you showing up for people? How are your sphere of influence? How are they affected by who you are? How are things, turning you into wanting to run away or wanting to dive in? These are things that we have to do. We weren't given these tools at an early age, and we were actually blinded by a system that wanted you to just regurgitate information that's completely irrelevant. And that has demoralized children, where children are not in their actual, I would say, intuitive body. And so the whole Steiner's perspective is it's intuition that we have to rebuild. That's the muscle that has to be flexed and the faculty that's been lost. And so intuition, discernment, they kind of relate, right? Because when you're discerning things and making decisions based on gathering information and resources and awareness, you're putting yourself at a position to make the right choice. It's not rocket science.
You're tuning into that deep truth. Yeah.
Totally. You're tuning into the primordial force of your soul. But this whole thing, your gut-brain axis is, the intuition that's developed in the GI tract. We now know that certain bacterias, they mix with certain proteins and enzymes, and they create neurotransmitters, not just serotonin and dopamine, but also things like anandamide, right? So anandamide, which is also you found in cacao, right, is the bliss molecule. These things are made in us. Like, we are of the earth. If I remove all the, earth minerals from your body right now, you'd wither away into a mush. We are of this earth, so we have to think of this earth. We can't think from this plane of not being part of this earth. And that's the hypermaterialism. The hypermaterialism tells us that we might need to put an electrode in our brain or some crazy draconian thing like that, or some just insanity where that's insane. And it's like, I kind of laugh at it because it's just like, what? How do we get here? Let's just rethink how we're raising children, how the cosmic union of man and woman come together, and the alchemy of birthing, just the birthing process. We could do a 10-hour lecture right now on how, the modern mechanics of birthing has changed the course of many souls entering here, and the plight that's caused damage on families and their entire legacy and their karma in this life. It's full on. And so again, let's just get back to the basics. And again, if you're hearing this right now, this might not be for you. There's no one's telling you what to do. And I'm not one of those people on social media that's like, if you do this, this is going to happen. Or if you eat this is bullshit. Or you got to believe in this ism. That's all ridiculous. We are all unique.
You do a beautiful job of the nudges, and like, you know what? And yeah, like people, when they connect to that, they get to go, like as you said, bring it into themselves and go on their own exploration. Otherwise, they are just trying to regurgitate what you're saying if you're telling them exactly what to do. Because there's a ton of people out there doing that. And I was susceptible to buying into that without results because it wasn't me.
No.
It's me trying to reverse engineer what this alleged, amazing, enlightened person was doing when it was all bullshit.
And because of that, that turns you into a bully. that turns you into someone that doesn't know how to react and control anger and frustration, that might turn you into a loner or someone that just can't connect. And that's also why you see a lot of the people in the spiritual community, like, they go and do a ceremony and they just completely blast out into, this 5D realm, whatever you want to call it. And they're just like floating in the ether and they're not grounded at all. And so they've lost their connection to the earth because they're in some kind of illusionary world. And then they start developing cognitive problems and other disorders. And that it's really clear that we are of the earth, but we're also of, a higher source. And bringing those things together through your intuition and finding that harmony in the middle, which is the Trinity, right? I think this dualistic world is very harmful. We need to find a center point. And I see it in kids, it's interesting. Like Bruce Lipton's work, The Biology of Belief. Big fan of Bruce Lipton and his work. I read that book, 12 years ago, and was really interested in epigenetics. And because of what I do with Cymbiotika, we're creating alchemy that can have an effect on things turning on and things turning off in the body. And so the study of epigenetics, epi meaning above, is that we are not slaves or victims to our genetic traits. It's the environment that dictates what gets turned on and what gets turned off. The environment could be your family life, could be the water you're drinking, could be the food that you're eating, the stuff that you're consuming, all things, not just food, anything. Those are what have such a direct relevancy to your development and your embodiment as a human. We know that children at third trimester to 7 years young are operating in theta brainwave, right? And theta on that Hertz signal is specific to imagination and memorization and picking up everything. So a child at age 3 or 4, they're literally a sponge, so they're living in theta. They might jump to alpha if they get angry, and then they go into delta in their sleep. But majority of the time they're in that imagination phase. So if you're not letting a child have imagination and experience things, and you're coddling the child, and you're a hypochondriac around the child, and you're scared about everything, all these things, that's what the messaging coding that they're picking up. And they're developing that, and that's becoming who they are. And that might not be what their soul wanted to be. And so now they're developing multi-personalities, and they're having all these conditions. And then what do? They here comes the drugs. It's full, dude, it's full on. It really is.
Well, what's so interesting about what you just said is in this theta state, there's memorization is a big thing. And so what do? We put them in to just memorize the shit out of everything. So it like turns off that creativity muscle. And then obviously that continues on through the rest of, unfortunately, most people's education.
That's right. And that's the virtue that they've developed. Right. And that's that, memorize, but not really care about it. It's just like cramming for a test. You're going to get the multiple, questions right. And then 3 days later, that's completely wiped from your file. Right. So why are we pushing that on? We need to let children choose the path, and there's going to be some curriculum. Of course, we're going to teach them the basic laws of arithmetic and some of those things. But why does a kid need to learn long division or the capital of Idaho or something that's irrelevant? Like, none of that matters. Let's teach them to build what they're already wanting to do and have them focus on things that intrigue them. Can you imagine the nurturing and the incubation that you can foster for a child in that kind of atmosphere, and what the difference would be versus a kid that's gone through the standard, systems? I've seen it because I have friends that have gone that route with their children, and I see friends the other route, and it's intense and it's emotional for me. I have a nephew and niece that are brilliant, beautiful children that come from really cool bloodlines of strong ancestry and It's incredible. The Persian roots and Sikh roots combining. These are ancient bloodlines, and the warriors and poets all combining, and they hold such brilliance, you know. And I can see, like, if they would have just tweaked it a little bit here, give a little bit more flexibility here, what could that have done to their soul? And it's never too late too. That's another thing. Is like, if you're listening to this, like, it's too late now. They're 8. Forget about it. No, we can retrain, redevelop, and we can unlearn.
Fuck yeah. And like, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about my kids, and mine are 20, 17, and 15.
What?
Yeah.
Say that again. 20,
17, and 15.
Wow. You could be my dad.
I'd happily be your dad. We got room in the house, I think.
I'll move in.
Might just bunk in with one of the boys, but they're.
You have a 20-year-old?
Yeah.
Are you like 10?
No, I'm 51.
Wow, incredible, brother. You're amazing. You're really doing it.
Thank you. But so, you know, we've had them in a few different education systems, and right now, my 17 and 15-year-old are at the public high school here, and they just kind of threw their hands up to, like, Dad, we're just going to a normal social experience, and
which has pros too.
100%.
Yeah, so we have to hold on to that.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I bring it up. It's like, what I try to share with them is the meta is this. Whatever this class is, or these grades, this education does not define you at all. You can excel at it. Awesome. But it is just one piece of one little thing. Go to school for the relationships, for the connections. Like, just like if you want to go on to college, you got to play the game. You got to do just well enough in certain areas to open up those options. But it's just such a bigger picture than that. And I mean, I think on the one hand, they totally appreciate that, because we don't put pressure on them to achieve great grades, but we do want effort. We want them, if they're going to be there, play the game. But and they're young. I mean, I think on the one hand, they appreciate, they don't doesn't quite land for them what I'm trying to share, but it's opening the door for them to really explore what is alive in them. And to your point, it's never too late. I mean, I would say arguably I woke up 5-6 years ago, you know? And so it's, as long as you're surrounding yourself with the right people. And I would say my wife, Peyton, and I have done a good job of not only just opening them up to life in general, but the people that we're friends with, that we bring around our kids are, you know, high quality, loving people that aren't about that other energy.
Sure.
You know,
I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I like what you said, giving them the awareness. Like, if you're going to show up here, if this is what it is, then just show up. Right. That's another thing is teaching them to have that. You know, I remember in football, my coach was like, Chervin, where's your intestinal fortitude? You know, I remember that. And it's like, okay, like, we're here. Let's get it cooking, you know, like, be all in if you're going to, however you do anything. Right. And so that's beautiful to hear that. And maybe, you know, your kids are going to listen to this podcast. Right. And that's just something, like, it's these little things. Just one message here can just activate something in someone, and holy cow, they have a whole new revelation on life. It's like that.
It is. And I think that's so important. You even talked about it a little bit before, like just these little wins. And so it's like these little just spoonfuls, and just don't force feed them, throw it out there, and they just accumulate over time. And don't expect them to have this big aha moment when you drop what you think is some real ass wisdom. It's building a relationship with them, trust in them, saying these things, watching them unfold, as you said. And, you know, I think the biggest things that we did is when we would say something about school, or, you know, one of the things that was really important to me is that when the shit hits the fan, I want them to come to me or Peyton, but I want them to feel safe in that. And so when the shit has hit the fan, and it has with each of them, just to keep the nervous system in check and actually show up that way, it's like walking that walk. And it's been so important for us. And there's still a lot more learning for us, even with our kids at the ages they are. It's different every time, and it's a challenge. And oftentimes we have to give the old cosmic give a little tickle.
That's right.
Because it is like, fuck, I thought I had this figured out. It's like, no, bro, it's always different. It's always changing. Just be present to what is unfolding right now with them in this moment, and then work through it with them.
Oh, great spirit. Chop wood, carry water. What do? You become enlightened. Yeah. What do you do the next day? Chop wood and you carry water, right? So the cycle keeps going. We're forever a student, and you're learning every day how to be a better father, how to be more empathetic, how to create more security for them and more love without coddling them too much. And I think that's really key, is that the trust factor is there, is that children just want to feel irregardless. And it's not a ticket to just go rambunctious and go absolutely berserk and maniacal and destroy everything in its path. But they want to also feel like, oh, my dad's got my back. You know what I mean? I can come to my father, and he's going to be rational, and he's not going to be compulsive, and he's going to hear me out, regardless if, I fucked up or whatever it is. That was really important for me. I felt that with my family, not with my mom, but with my father. My father had more of the, I don't like calling it the feminine energy, because I think it's masculine too, to be very strong and also hold the parameters strong. But it was more of an energy where it wasn't, let's go fisticuffs, and like, let me make you feel worse than you already feel. I didn't have that. And that opened me up and allowed me to have more of communication with him and seek his advice, because I knew that he was going to be bringing advice and wisdom from a place of freedom and sovereignty, as opposed to judgment. And that's really important. If you're listening to this, you have children, you want to you need to be the safe place for them. You are the sanctuary by far. There's no one else that's going to hold that level of sanctuary. And also, different children require different energy and frequencies. We talk about the school system, how it's one size fits all. Well, we can't take on that consciousness with how we hold our children. I mean, there are certain things that have to be standard, right? That umbrella, the guiding mechanisms. But every individual, every soul that incarnated into your wife's womb is different, has a different pattern, has a different frequency, reacts different to things. All these people talk about their gene keys, their human design, their horoscope. I'm this, I'm that. This is my rising. This is my moon, right? Well, if that's the case and you believe 1% of all that stuff, then you would have to take that on and individualize your communications with everyone. If you believe in any of that, 1% of what you're preaching, then you have to understand everyone's different. Everyone has a different archetype. Everyone has a different shadow. Everyone has a different city. Everyone has a different, whatever, their life's journey. It's different. It's different phases. And I think we have to get very architectural type and have a blueprint set and really understand who our children are and take them as individuals and not collect them like, well, he's not like Johnny. Well, Johnny does, that's terrible. Comparing children that are different is the worst ever. It creates an emptiness in the child that's being compared to, that's lesser of. And that creates a lot of stigmatism. Maybe it causes stigmatism too. And I love this conversation, man.
Yeah, brother.
This is great.
So glad to have you here.
Yeah. This is what I like to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I know I just roll the ball out for you and let you roll.
Yeah.
So one thing we talked about before we got on was that the spring equinox is the Persian New Year.
That's right.
And we started to kind of pull that thread a little bit. And so I'd love to just kind of, share a little bit more about that.
We call it's called Nowruz, which is new day. And Steiner's whole thing, anthroposophy, which I'm an anthroposophist. I'm an active anthroposophist. So anthro, the man, Sophia, the wisdom. So it's a study of man's perspective on the spiritual and clairvoyance. And most of the ancients knew that the new year is the first day of spring. It's the equinox in the northern hemisphere. And how did we get this January 1st in the middle of winter when everybody's nesting and hibernating?
Jamie had a theory.
Yeah, what was that theory?
Well, I think it was just that
the distortion.
There were some bad actors that were like, fuck this, let's start it on January 1st because everyone's going to have that as the new year. We're going to start our whatever, fill in the blank, and we're going to fall flat because we're still deep in hibernation. And it's the hardest time to really shift anything.
I mean, they have you celebrating Christ and then you're going directly into the new year, which is crazy. And it's, so you have Christmas and then you have the new year, right? And so the spring
right?
is just the awakening of our mother, right? It's when everything that has been sequestered in hibernation starts to wake up. And that is an active awareness to have in your own physiology in your own life. So, what Jamie's talking about is implosionary energy, which is nature's reactive force. So like, for example, this will go off on a whole nother thing. So Victor Schauberger, do you know who Victor Schauberger is?
I don't.
You should, because you have water here and you need to start vortexing your water. This is how you structure water. Have you seen water that vortexes?
I have at our other house, I have
you have a spinner, or you have the egg.
No, it's pretty cool. I think it's a German device where you pour it in and it vortexes it into.
There you go.
It's sweet.
Well, what that's doing is it's giving the water and it's activating its memory as if it was coming from an aquifer, like a spring. And so Victor Schauberger was the warden of the forest in Austria. And so was his dad and his grandpa. So it's just like, it's part of their lineage. It's a karma. And so he was researching in the forest, this is in the early 1900s, and saw that there was trout in a different part of this lake that he couldn't believe how that trout got there because that trout was downstream, and it shocked him. And he was writing about, he's journaling about it. He was like, "What? How did this trout get here?" And so he started researching and studying them, and he would watch them. And then one night on a full moon, cold part of the winter, he noticed that the trout would go under the waterfall and get into some kind of hypnotic state, and then slide right under the impact of the water and then shoot up the waterfall.
What?
Yeah. Oh, have you seen like salmon jumping streams?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I feel like I have.
You have, right?
Yes.
So what he figured out is that the trout, just through their physiology and just the mother, the cosmic, whatever this is, they have this instruction or awareness that they can tap into nature's reaction to explosion. And that's called implosionary energy. And that's a known thing. And that's why all these, you hear all these devices, Tesla, all these things, it's implosionary where, burning gas is explosion. You press the pedal, the gas hits the torch, you control that chaos, and then it pushes the piston. That's a one-time use, where implosion is nonstop. And this is like, singular energy units, things like that were, they probably have this type of energy. And it's just whoever controls the energy controls everything, right? And so this form of energy is nature. The way that water gets to that leaf on top of that redwood and makes its way up, 400 feet is an implosionary energy. The way that our heart pumps and all that stuff, that's implosionary energy.
Yeah, because people think it's literally a pump, but it's the vortex. I remember reading that with, I think, Dr. Thomas Cowan's work.
Which he's an anthroposophist. He understands Steiner's work. Dr. Cowan does great work. And so that is an electrical energy, an implosionary energy. And if you notice, everywhere there's implosion in nature, it's beauty. It's beautifying. Waterfalls, streams, springs. I'm an avid spring hunter. I've been a spring hunter. This is something we do. We go, but where the hell is the spring? Whenever we're in Iceland, where's the spring? Whenever we're in South America, where's the spring? When we're on the Hawaiian Islands, where's the spring? It's just something that's like a calling, right? It's just something that we do. And around springs it's beautiful. Everything's beautifying. The trees are beautiful. The flowers, the nature, because it's giving off that level of ions, whatever you want to call it. It's just in that field, and it's hallelujah. Yet where it's explosionary energy, like the freeways, the industrial areas, everything's withered away. Everything's dying. Everything's ugly. And so what she brought up is that nature is tapping into that implosionary energy. And we are of nature, right? We talked about it. We do live in artificial boxes with artificial lights and artificial temperatures, and we're getting DoorDash to our door. So we're losing that connection. And so that's something to tap in. And that's the Persian New Year. The Persian New Year is step through the fire, the alchemy of fire, right? Which is something we do. It's called Charshamba Suri, which is a celebration. You jump through the fire and you burn off everything that does not belong to you, that's not serving you, you're just like, okay, this is going into the alchemy of fire, because it's fire in this realm that we're in that can transmute mass, like material, into nothingness, right? Like when you burn something, where does that go? Like we just think of smoke, but what's happening there? Like it's a trip, right?
Yeah.
And so
I'm tripping a little bit just thinking about that.
You think about it,
considered that before.
Well, they call it a trip because it's a tryptamine, right? Okay, so spring is the awakening. And so people that are going to be listening to this, like this is the time, especially if you're in, northern latitudes.
I wish this were live so people could get this right now, because this is the time.
Well, it'll be live when they get it.
That's right. It'll be the time for them.
So spring equinox is a very powerful moment. It's the awakening. It's the creative space. The Taoist immortals, traditional Chinese herbal medicine, they have this is the time that you start getting prepared out of the yin stage. This is more of the qi stage and your creative space. And then you're heading towards the jing of summer, right? And summer is where you express all that you've rejuvenated and the creativity that led you from spring into summer. And you go absolutely berserk.
Yes, you do. So tell me this, what do you feel like for you right now is being birthed, is emerging?
Well, that's conversation. And I think for me, it's slowing down. I've tried to slow down. So it's tough. When you have this awareness and you're not in full alignment with it, it's a little bit like, oh God, but I've signed up to be in the position that I'm in right now. And I know that nothing is permanent and it's just part of the reality that I am, but I can control certain factors. Like for me, I've been a hermit for a minute now. I stay relatively in my area. I've slowed down on certain things. I've put more thoughts inwards as opposed to an outward thought. So my whole thing is be your own teacher. It's easy to give advice, but how many people are giving that advice, but also taking it? That's really important. And so I've been working on that. That's been part of my meditation. Like, okay, if I run across me, what would I tell him? And then I take that information, non-objectively, what would I tell him? And then I say, okay, am I applying that? Am I embodying that? Where am I living in a false identity? And I can see where some of the falsities of my embodiment are leading me towards, frustration and some escapism behavior. Because, at the end of the day, we still need to live and survive to a certain extent. And so, okay, well, what am I doing to escape? I'm going in my sauna. I'm going on a walk on the trail overlooking the ocean. Maybe I put the Laker game on. I have things that I know that are helping. I can kind of just turn things off. And we need to be able to shut down a little bit. And so I'm aware of these things and I talk to myself about them. So I'm not self-loathing. You get that right there?
Yeah, that was big.
Deal. That's a big one.
It's easy to drop into that.
Yeah, we got to get honest with ourselves and also communicate with ourselves. Because if we don't, we're just storing it and putting the rug under, dusting it under the rug. That starts to build up and then, messes up your ability to make the right decisions.
Yeah, I had an experience with that. I would say, went through a pretty challenging period last year. And my escapism was, I was just like listening to sports/comedy podcasts. And it was my way to just like breathe. And after a while, I was like, dude, like you're not like consuming like good information. You're just listening to this stuff. And then when I really zoomed out, it's like, bro, that's what you needed. You needed a break.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that because you and I are in the same boat. I've been a fanatic sports guy my whole life. And I'm always, it takes me back to childhood. Right. And so, when I'll give you an example, when my father was sick, I was watching Kobe Bryant reruns of like most of the championship runs from, even down back in 2000, and against the 76ers. And then the second round when he went against the Orlando Magic and the Boston Celtics. I was just watching these, and it just put me into like, a different state of mind. And I was able to just get out of the current reality. And I knew what I was doing. So I had a plan.
Yeah.
And then it just took the pressure off a little bit. And so we're going to have these things in our life because it's a pretty crazy world, and we got a lot of responsibilities, and there's all these things and all this stuff, we're flying around in planes, and it's weird, that's not normal. And so those vices, just make sure that you have awareness about them.
Yeah.
And that you're not rabbit holing outside of your reality too much, and you're finding balance with it.
Yeah, it's a question. The why. Why am I choosing this? And yeah, the vices are, they have varying severity and implications. But even people numbing and soothing with alcohol, it can be the appropriate thing.
100%. A glass of biodynamic wine.
Now you're talking.
Twice a week. You're fine. But be aware.
Be aware.
And understand what it is that you're drinking. Like, don't do things unconscious. Like people that are just habitual coffee drinkers, right? After 10 years of habitual coffee drinking and not understanding what coffee is doing to the body, they're going to have problems. They're going to create high levels of acid in the body. They're going to erode their esophagus and their gut, and they're going to have, problems with their adrenals and things like that. But if you're conscious when you're drinking coffee, that means that you're probably going to add fats to it, and you're going to be mineralized. You might take Shilajit with it, and you're using coffee as your weapon to go and accomplish something. You're not just sitting around just doing it, or people that are just rushing to get food in, just to get food in. That's unconscious behavior. And so again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So the more awareness you can have, the more appreciation and the more discernment you're going to be practicing to at least make sure you're mitigating any slight damage that could be happening.
Well, it's a perfect segue because we get about 10 minutes left of part one. Don't worry, folks. We are definitely going to do a part two.
I can see a series with us.
Holy shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You take that seat anytime,
creative
brother.
Creative stuff. This conversation's creativity for me. I'm not trying to pull anything from my memory bank.
No, I can feel that.
Yeah, it's raw.
You just hear, brother.
Yes, sir.
So let's drop into some Cymbiotika stuff because we are talking about health and
sure.
And remember, folks, it's without tapping into that self-love and doing that kind of work, not much of this stuff's going to be bioavailable for you. But let's just say it is going to be. I want to hear. You gave me. Again, I mentioned it earlier before we got on, but this is a little blue pill, but it's the proper blue pill, and you are going to work on a red one. I like that.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
That's Para-X. That's 2 years in the making. That's being around a bunch of holistic healers my whole life, understanding Ayurveda, TCM, understanding orthomolecular medicine, which is the study of the lack of nutrients leads you towards peril and disease. And that's a combination of also doing a heavy deep dive in research with my team on, all the different infections out there that are leading towards autoimmune, that are leading towards other more hardcore pathologies out there. And so we're in an age right now where there's a lot of stuff out there. And because our immune systems have been fractured, to say the least, we're not able to mitigate that and run in homeostasis. And I've been seeing over the last several years, just being in the space directly, a lot of people falling apart mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, because they don't have a grip on their body. And they're having things in their body attack their central nervous system. And you hear it all the time. You hear about Lyme, right? Which is, the Borrelia spirochete. You hear, which is a bacteria. You hear about, toxoplasmosis. You hear about candida. You hear about yeast infections. You hear about H. pylori, Helicobacter, which is a gram-negative bacteria that rips apart your tight junctions in your gut and causes alkalosis to occur, which causes a cytokine storm, which causes leaky gut, which then leads to Hashimoto's and leads to fibromyalgia and leads to all the other autoimmune conditions. And this is taking people out of their bodies, and it's heavy. And I know from firsthand experience, because I had mercury poisoning from a rattlesnake bite that I had. And that
I know. I wish we could really get into that, because I've heard you tell that story, but we have not nearly enough time. That's for episode 2.
Episode 2, let's do it. And you know, the mercury in that really fractured my body, and I'd been the bill of health my entire life. Never had a loss for words, never had a loss for communication, awareness, my own self, how I felt. And for probably the most devastating time of my life too, right before my father was in the deepest part of his episode, and I was completely disjointed from my brain. I was twitching everywhere.
Whoa.
Yeah, I couldn't carry a sentence. I'd lost so much weight. I was like, what the hell? I was ready to check out. I was practicing samadhi on medicine, staring in the mirror, just 9-point death meditation, doing it all. It was intense. And I came out of that. That's part of my karma. That's part of my dark night of the soul. But it was such a powerful lesson for me, because my level of empathy and compassion for people that are in it just went through the roof, because I embodied it and I felt it. And so for me, this is intentional based. There's no claims behind anything, but every compound in this formula was designed to either search and destroy something that doesn't belong in the body, or create a cloaking device in the body so the immune system can see it. It's not a cleanse. It's to take the burden off the immune system. Imagine you're fighting a war and you have one front with your enemy. That way you can focus your targets, you can focus all your weapons, you can focus everything. You can have your generals prepare for that. You can bottleneck them, so to speak. But what if you have a war in every cardinal direction? And I'm not just talking about north, south, east, west. What about 30 degrees, 38 degrees, 39? Okay, all of that hitting at once, you're spread thin. The immune system spread thin. And then all of a sudden you have, an emotional day, or you get in a fight with your lover, or you get this terrible news or whatever happens. And then all of a sudden your stress hits high, and boom, explosion happens in the body. And now you're under attack, and your viral loads are now everywhere in the body, and you're succumbing to that. A lot of people are dealing with that right now. A lot of people are having these symptoms. A lot of people are not in their body. They can't sleep properly. They're dysregulated. They have the muscle twitching, the heart palpitations, skin is dry, blotchy skin, hair is brittle, eyes are red. I can go on and on. There's so many symptoms involved in here, and it creates chaos. And so I wanted to create a formula that helps mitigate that. And this is as heavy duty as it comes. I mean, it's basically, if you saw, it's liquid cap with micro bead spheres in there. Those are the blue beads in there. That liquid is a combination of pure oregano oil, thyme oil, clove oil, monolaurin, and full olive fruit oil. All of those oils have antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiparasitic, I can go on and on, all of that in there. Then we took that oil and we ran it through a triple pass ozone. Okay. So that oil is ozonated. So, but if you don't know what ozone is unstable oxygen. It's O3. It's become part of the new realm. I mean, I've known about ozone pretty much half my life, but now people are doing ozone therapies. So not only we have the herbs in there, but we also have the atmosphere. Ozone is what you smell after a rain. It's how the atmosphere cleans itself. It's a gas, and it's an unstable oxygen. So that gets its way into the gut, and all of a sudden in the gut, it converts to hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide then dismantles all pathogens in the body. It rips apart the cell walls. So you have that. Now we have the microbeads. In those microbeads, there's about 39 compounds. 39.
Damn.
And one of the main compounds, not to get too in detail, it's really fascinating. Not only we have andrographilus in there, which is the Indian echinacea, but we have one in particular called CAPE, which is caffeic acid phenethyl ester. Now, most people have no idea what that is, but it's one of the main phenolic compounds found in bee propolis. Okay. Now, do you know what bee propolis is? So bee propolis is a powerful, I would say, alchemy. And it's what the bees chose as part of the destiny of this earth to protect the hive. So it doesn't allow fungus and mold and bacteria and beetles and bugs to penetrate the hive. Now just think how important that is. Without the beehives, none of us are here. I don't care. We wouldn't exist. So our mother chose that compound to be part of the protection of humanity and everything else in nature outside of humanity, just the animal kingdom and all that. So that compound, which nobody out there in the supplement world is doing, that's one of the most expensive compounds ever. And, I don't care. We're going to do this the right way. That compound has case studies on it that are so insane, talking about some of the craziest problems out there. I don't want to talk about it, but just go on your search engine. I don't know what search engine you use, but type in caffeic acid phenethyl ester studies and just see what you find there. It is insane. And I'm honored to be able to be just one of, a bunch of people at Cymbiotika that are offering this. And I want to be very clear. This is a team effort. I'm just, one cog in this beautiful alchemy of a group. And I'm really proud of the Cymbiotika team. My partners, the organization is really, really just, we're putting ourselves out there to do it the right way. And it's spreading like wildfire for the right reasons, the right spread. And so this formula is a testament to what we stand for, doing things the right way.
Beautiful. I think we're at time.
Well,
and that was
this has been fantastic,
buddy.
And I'm really, really hyped on continuing this, and let's keep it going, man.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. And there will be, go to Cymbiotika. We'll have a link in the show notes, but Unlearn will get you a nice little discount from our friends here. And I can't wait for round 2.
Me too, man.
I love you, brother.
Love you too, man.